On September 12th, 2010, almost 10 years ago, I was working as a hospitality manager at P.F. Chang's when the course of my entire life would be changed forever. I had graduated several years prior with a business degree in entrepreneurship, and I tackled the opportunity to work at P.F. Chang's with the same grit and determination that I would a small business. In just a few months, I'd worked my way up from hostess to server and then was promoted to manager. And I loved it. For me, it was that perfect mix of people interaction, employee management, and office work. I was on the path of having a career in the restaurant industry. Well, on September 12th, I was managing the dinner shift, and I was asked to close the kitchen. So after all my servers had left, I walked through the kitchen and checked on the last of the staff that was finishing up. Then I headed to the office to start on some paperwork. Several minutes later, I heard a knock at the door. Assuming it was that last employee coming to let me know that he was leaving for the night, I got up and I opened the door to a gun in my face. I have never felt that level of panic in my life. I reached up, grabbed my chest, trying to slow my heart from beating so fast. The masked gunman came in. He tied up my hands and my feet. He put blue painter's tape around my face so that I couldn't see. He robbed the office safe. He threatened to kill me. And then, instead of just leaving, he raped me. As soon as I heard him leave the room, I quickly got my hands free and I called the police. Then a whirlwind began. The police investigation, going to the Rape Crisis Center, giving statements to the special victims detectives, hearing news stories, then getting phone calls from other people who had heard those news stories and realized it was me. You see, if the circumstances had been different, I wouldn't have breathed a word of this to anyone except my husband. I felt so much shame. Not the guilt of it being my fault, because I knew that it wasn't, but shame. Shame that if I revealed what had happened to me or how much it was affecting me, I would be seen as weak, flawed, broken, or unworthy. I feel that shame creeping in right now as I tell you my story. What if you see me as someone who should have done something differently? Or who should have just gotten over it? Maybe you see me as someone who could never recover. I hate not being in control of the way that others perceive me. But my circumstances were that it happened at work, and all of it was recorded on video surveillance. So those detectives saw everything. There was no hiding. Even worse, my attacker ended up being a coworker, an off-shift cook that exploited a series of security issues to regain entrance back in the building and carry out his attack. P.F. Chang's disagreed on those issues, so I endured a 9-year legal battle that ultimately resulted in a courtroom full of people having to hear every detail from that night. So yeah, there was no hiding. But I'm standing here today to tell you that I survived. And I think that a big reason that I'm able to stand here and share with you my story is because of vulnerability. And I'm going to spend the rest of my time speaking on that with you today. There are many reasons that people choose not to share painful, personal, or traumatic experiences. I touched on my hesitancy, which were those feelings of shame. But other reasons might be the worry of burdening others. Maybe the subject is taboo. It's just too painful to talk about. Or it could be people's reactions, which are typically awful when you share something painful. I'll give you a quick example. So a few weeks after my attack, I had to be examined by a doctor. I walked into the office and I explained to him why I was there and what had happened. To which he responded, "Well, don't you think he would have stopped if you just started screaming?" That was about the worst thing someone could have said to me right then. You see, people are going to say the wrong thing sometimes, so I get the hesitancy to talk. But if we never speak up and share about our painful experiences, we end up suppressing our feelings. Without vulnerability, we don't have an outlet for that stress that builds from those painful experiences, often causing us to choose unhealthy methods of coping. Our emotional health has a significant impact on us socially. I remember one time I was talking to a therapist during a session we were having, and he said to me, "Emilee, you sure are lucky that you found me, or else you would have become a complete recluse." Well, I thought that sounded a bit arrogant. But the statement was so shocking, it got me thinking, am I reclusive? I have friends, so surely not. But the more I started thinking about it, I realized he was right. I was headed down a path of avoidance. I would avoid the things that would trigger that anxiety for me. Things like driving my car at night, going for a run, even sitting in my backyard by myself. I would avoid talking to my friends about my feelings because it was just so overwhelming. And I didn't want to burden them with my problems. But by avoiding those things, I was slowly becoming reclusive. And the way that I had to correct that was by becoming more vulnerable. I had to open up and share that I was struggling so that I could face those fears, so that I could overcome those fears. It wasn't easy, but I started putting in the work, and it may not sound like much, but I can sit in my backyard by myself. I can run out to the car at night if I need to grab something. Those are tangible signs of healing in my life that started with becoming more vulnerable. Now, let's talk about oversharing, because you don't want to be that guy, right? The one that sneezes and feels the need to post a picture of it on social media? Or what about the mom that posts about her child's potty training adventures? I'm a mom. I have a lot of mom friends, so I've seen way too many posts like that. But other than appearing a bit annoying, what are some serious pitfalls of oversharing? Airing your personal problems and going on and on about situations in your life isn't healthy vulnerability. And frankly, doing so will cause emotional fatigue to those around you and leave you feeling disappointed in their reactions. Okay, here's what I'll say about vulnerability on social media. And there are always exceptions, I get that. But for the most part, ask yourself, are you posting something because you're seeking empathy or attention? If so, you will likely be disappointed. There are never going to be enough likes or satisfying comments. Consider what Brené Brown, a researcher, fellow TED Talker, and authority on vulnerability has to say. Now, I'm taking this a little out of context, so let me explain that she was saying this in regards to public speaking. But I think we can apply that to social media, which is a stage of sorts. She said, "A story is only ready to share when the presenter's healing and growth is not dependent on the audience's response to it. You see, I think what people are truly seeking is understanding that comes from personal connection. So get it from personal connection. Now, if you're sharing something or you're being vulnerable about a situation because you're trying to offer hope and understanding to others, then I think social media can serve as a powerful platform for that. For example, several years ago, I had a miscarriage. It was devastating, and the level of grief that I experienced really took me by surprise. That year, I had several people I know that shared their stories of miscarriage. And I think that their goal in sharing and the thing that I most benefited from was realizing I was not alone in that deep despair. It takes vulnerability to share something that personal, especially that was once considered taboo. It also takes vulnerability to allow yourself to be moved and influenced by the stories that others share. Thankfully, because of my vulnerability and that I experienced, I was able to grieve and have emotional healing. Now, even with the best of intentions, if you go on and on and on about a specific circumstance, you run the risk of being defined by that. I choose not to define myself as a survivor, although I'm pretty sure that's part of the description that's listed under my name in your program, because that is a big part of the story that I'm sharing today. But in life, I am so much more. I am more than my circumstances, and so are you. I choose to see myself as Emilee, someone who is deeply grounded in my faith, girl mom, wife, loyal friend. I see myself as someone who's been given a strength to endure the difficult things I've been through and be able to talk about them. I have love and empathy and compassion that drive me to stand up for myself and others so that I can share hope and encouragement. At least that's my prayer. I still struggle. I feel unequipped. I feel insecure. This is being vulnerable. And if I weren't, you'd only see a piece of me. If I weren't willing to share all parts of me, some that you may identify better with, then I'm closing off a potential connection that we may have. If you don't want to be defined by your circumstances, then you need to know who you are and be grounded in that. Because vulnerability can be terrifying. It's being unprotected. It's emotional exposure, which is why it is so important to carefully choose the people you are willing to be vulnerable with. You need safe, authentic relationships. You need people who know you for who you really are and love you. I am fortunate to have that. I have that in my faith, a relationship with Jesus that gives me that safe place to practice vulnerability. I also have that in trustworthy and authentic friendships. And I can tell you that to have those kind of friendships, it takes work and patience and vulnerability. But it is so worth it because those are the friends and family that I go to when I'm struggling and I need support. We need those types of connections in order to bounce back after we've been through something difficult. When I'm willing to share my feelings of insecurity, worry, failure, whatever it is that I'm going through, those are the people who remind me of who I really am, that I am more than my circumstances. I think this quote by Timothy Keller sums this up perfectly. To be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. To be known but not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God. It is what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense, humbles us out of our self-righteousness, and fortifies us for anything that life can throw at us. Thank you.